And welcome to the Tuesday edition of Top Story. And this morning, we are once again focusing on the upcoming municipal election. We are featuring live debates for each ward starting today at noon until 1 o'clock. Each day until the end of the week. And we are also, in case you missed it, you can find it on demand. We did a debate with the mayors, and joining me this morning is the mayoral candidate, Rory Ring. So Rory, tell me a little bit about the campaign itself in your mind. A lot of people are talking about how it's gotten kind of ugly.
Well, I think one of the things that you can actually do is take a look and see how the campaign was run 4 years ago with, the incumbent and that approach to challenging Debbie Amoroso. And I think you'll see actually some similarities on that campaign where, you need to call out the actions and hold to account the candidates, and really you start to measure the difference between what was said and what was delivered. So there is a role for a challenger to do just that. And I have approached this that, we talk about governance and transparency, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that as we move into some of the more topical issues today, but you have to be held to account. If you're saying that you're going to hold the city to responsible spending, how is it that you do an 11% increase in taxes? How is it that you haven't put forward the cost of severance pay for 10 individuals that have been exited from the organization itself and other organizations that related to it? So how is it then that we can continue to look at, what is the city delivering in terms of making sure it has performed its duty as a custodian for the taxpayers' dollars? So, we do have to call to account to really measure what the performance has been.
Now, speaking of transparency, recently the Sarnia-Lambton newspaper, as well as the London Press, I believe, wrote a column about the fact that they were challenging the reasons that you indicated you left the Chamber of Commerce in Sarnia.
Yeah, I mean, let's be, quite clear that really at the end of the day, the truth will only be known by my wife and myself because we lived through it. So certainly there were some challenges around the notions of governance at the Chamber of Commerce at that time. And when you take a look at what a board member signs on to, as a board, you sign on to a code of conduct. You sign on to a conflict of interest policy. You sign on to a code of ethics, and you sign on with the notions of what are called duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience. And as role as a CEO, you are to challenge those elements with your board of directors should there be an infringement upon those notions. That is what I did. And I call, this, if you like, just standing for the principles that are set forth. And that does create conflict, and as a result, that conflict ended up in my termination. And I want people to be very, very clear that this is not any notions of criminal activity or anything to do with that. These are things that are about governance. And how do you stand and preside over an organization or lead an organization if you cast those notions aside for self-interest? How is it that you cast aside an employer that supports those activities? Accusations, or not, direct conflict or not, it is the assumption that if it is perceived to be, you have to take action to mitigate the risk to the organization. And I stood by my principles, and I will stand by my principles again if these are ever presented to me. People will call it moral courage. And leadership is based on having the moral courage to stand for those that are victimized, stand for the principles that are put forward. And I believe I have exemplified those principles upon which governance and leadership is bound.
Now, in this particular article that I'm referring to, Rory, an anonymous source indicated that the accusations, the insinuations that you used about why you were dismissed from Sarnia's Chamber of Commerce were defamatory and inflammatory.
That's like asking a bully if they're a bully.
So you think that the Sarnia Chamber of Commerce has bullied you out of the job?
No. I mean, that's asking somebody, you know, if somebody has put forward a particular notion that, you know, circumstances happened that has worked beyond those elements of governance, of course you're going to feel a little perturbed by somebody saying, you know, you were stepping out of bounds. That's all I'm saying.
So with regards to the fact that there was an anonymous source and that officials with the current, you know, staff with the Chamber of Commerce in Sarnia did not want to comment.
Well, staff would not be commenting. This is an issue that resides at the board.
Right.
End of story.
And they won't comment.
End of story.
End of story. So tell us a little bit about the fact that your records indicate that the 3 years you were with the Sarnia Chamber of Commerce, that you ran deficits. Yeah,
so not dissimilar to what's happening here in Sault Ste.Marie, where there's a very, very significant loss in revenue. So they had the Motor Vehicle Bureau, the Licensing Bureau, and the province took that contract away from approximately 80 chambers across the province, and each of them felt very significant financial stress. So the immediate impact of that was falling from a positive cash flow between 130 and 150,000 to a negative cash flow. That really was the driver of the revenue and the income, the bottom line income for the Chamber of Commerce. At the same time, you had elements of a challenged economy where members were not paying, and a lot of those accounts receivables are sitting on the books year over year to, you know, I guess make it look like it's a little bit stronger than it actually is, to say that, oh, we have 1,000 members when really only 700 are paying. At some point in time, you have to make the decision to account for that in your income statement. So the board had made those decisions, right? Those decisions, you know, this notion or this caricature or this narrative that is trying to be played is that this was done in total isolation from the board of directors or the finance committee or the executive. All that reporting happens on a monthly basis, and there was full knowledge as to the financial situation that the chamber was facing because of the loss of the Motor Vehicle Bureau. So we made great efforts, the board and the staff, to turn that organization around, and that takes time. When you've lost your main revenue source, you've lost a number of paying memberships, and you're trying to drive more value out of an organization. So, you know, we took the steps necessary over those 3 years to turn it around, and it takes time, as it is taking time in Sault Ste.Marie. You know, but we're there. You know, Sault Ste.Marie now has retooled so that it will reach positive cash flow. Sarnia turned around in 3 years to reach positive cash flow. So again, you ask your question, if you were there and turning it around, why would a termination exist? You know, you've done what you were tasked to do. You know, and there was a commitment to get there, and a commitment, like here in Sault Ste.Marie, to make the investments necessary to change the way we operate so that we can be effective in terms of delivering value.
So, you know, Rory, it's interesting because you're talking about how, you know, no man is an island, right?
Yeah.
You're running a Chamber of Commerce, you're running a city. When you talk about the record of the incumbent, you never say, you know what, council and the mayor or city staff and the mayor. You zero in on the mayor.
Well, you know, it's it's part of a discussion I had with a friend of mine when I was considering running for mayor. Because I had had this conversation that the Chamber of Commerce has gone through some tough times. We've got it retooled. We have the ability perhaps to advocate stronger with a new council, create some opportunities for our community, for our economy, for our membership. And, you know, and in that consideration, it was said, at the end of the day, it all comes down to leadership. You know, and if you're looking for savings in an organization and your leader is not looking for those savings, how does that instill other individuals to find those savings for you. If you don't care about changing a situation, if you don't want to move in a particular direction, or you move in a particular direction, it is your team that will follow. So it comes down to leadership. And action, I believe it needs to be action-based leadership. It needs to be fully engaging. And, you know.
So like the leader of a Chamber of Commerce, his team would follow.
Yeah, a leader of any organization, right, whether it's the United Way, Rotary, IBM,
sure,
you know, or Amazon, you know, look at how it is the leadership that sets the tone. And I have a very different style of leadership than the incumbent. I feel that leadership really comes through an individual, right? That you have to, especially when you're talking about leading a community, because you have to bring a number of stakeholders, people who are vested in the community together. But those stakeholders also report to their own boards of directors. They have their own strategic plans. They have their own operational plans. And how do we harness the energies within those organizations and within our community and channel that to make our community better? It's very different than saying, I'm your leader. You need to do this, you need to do this, and you need to do that. You know, so the style of leadership is different. It's not to say one style is worse than the other. Other than I would say that modern day leadership means fully engaging the stakeholders that surround you and leveraging their expertise. I really believe that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, you know, so that if you all come together, you are able to move a community faster and further than if you tried to do it yourself.
So when you left the Sarnia Chamber of Commerce, did you feel like that was, you had just divided, your morals and your beliefs were just so different from the groups that you talk about, you know, supporting and a leader leading the different facets of the organization? Were you just like black and white with them at that point?
Well, I think you have to be. You know, if there's an infringement upon these things, like I call, conflict of interest, code of conduct, duty of care, duty of loyalty, they're not just words. You know, and they're not words to be manipulated to fulfill an individual's desire for whatever. You know, and I'm sorry, you cannot hide behind the commitments made. You sign off as becoming part of an organization, part of a board of directors to lead an organization. You assign to those values and those principles and that moral center, if you like. And I'm just an individual that says, if you stray from that, I will hold you accountable.
Are you feeling good about the campaign so far? Some people are talking about how it's gotten very personal. It's gotten to be, you know, a little bit angry and divisive somewhat. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, you know, your citizens are going to see the way it's portrayed. And, you know, I'm a positive individual. And I believe in creating a positive atmosphere. I believe that we need to create a better positive atmosphere for our community. There's a lot of positive people out there. You know, finishing up this weekend, I estimate that I've talked to almost 7,500 individual citizens of Sault Ste.Marie. 7,500. You know, I mean, obviously Catch the Ace has been a fortunate way to actually to shake hands and listen to our citizens. And I think, you know, I think what's missing is this notion of, how am I, as a citizen, involved in my city? You know, and I call it citizen-centered government. You know, we talk about a strategic plan. We talk about, you know, governance. But at the end of the day, what really matters is, are we making decisions that have a positive outcome for our citizens? Are we spending and investing our citizens' money? Because it is their money. It's not the city's money. It's taxpayers' money. And are we doing the right things to make sure that we are giving them a proper return on their investments? I look at a couple things. You know, like, here's a decision. We talk about, you know, I want to have a Sault Ste. Marie first procurement policy. You know, I get told I can't do that. Well, you know what? I'm taking I can't out of my vocabulary. It is banned from my vocabulary because I choose to. I choose to do it within the bounds and context of the Municipal Act, but I choose to make it happen. And why? Because we just assigned the city just assigned the fuel contract to an organization in Oakville. We had a local company bid on that, McDougall. There was about a $50,000 difference. So I looked up, well, what does that mean in terms of cost effectiveness and competitiveness in terms of that bid. The commercial property tax in Oakville, 0.86%. Sault Ste.Marie, 2.97%. So here you have a local organization paying 3.5 times the commercial property tax rate and loses a contract with a $50,000 spread. There's mechanisms that we can put in place that help us make decisions that could make a decision like that, create jobs in Sault Ste. Marie. Create a way to broaden the tax base so that we can freeze and lower taxes. It's that kind of thinking, that we need to instill in our organization, and that puts our citizens first.
Unfortunately, I could chat with you all day. We're out of time today for our live edition of Top Story. It's crunch time with the campaign.
It is. Looking forward to it. Yeah, looking forward to it. It's, it is exciting, and it is also a little nerve-wracking. Obviously, I'm a novice at this. I'm not a seasoned political machine, but it is exciting, and it's been a great learning experience. And I really hope that I have the opportunity to put our citizen-centered policies forward. So,
good to see you, Rory. Thanks so much. We'll be back with more Top Story right after this.